Hey guys, Chris Kelly here with ProductionCrate.com. Today I'm going to teach you how to create that light exposure effect that you just saw. Now, I'm already set up here in After Effects and I have my clip of me walking across the screen with my cell phone. I have the flashlight on so it's casting some light. That way when I go ahead and put in my light exposure typography elements, they're going to look like they're actually casting some light and it'll give it that extra realism. If you're not a ProductionCrate member, it is free to sign up and you can download each letter A through Z from this light exposure typography kit absolutely free. So I already have the letters I want to use imported, C-R-A-T-E. I'm going to spell obviously crate with that, and I'm just going to import the letters in the order that I want to spell, starting with C, R, A, oops, T, and E. Now to get these to sit in the scene, I could manually scale move them around, but I love good shortcuts and I assume you do too. So the fastest way I found, and the most effective way I found to get these to read in order and be spaced evenly, is to select the first letter and then shift select the last letter. And I'm going to be using a script that is free, but if you donate to the creator, I'm sure they would appreciate it. That script is, so I'm going to go to File, Scripts, and find the script Layers to Grid. So I'll put a link to this script in the description, or you can find it at aescripts.com. It is free, but if you can donate 10, 15 bucks, it would really help the creator out. This is a super useful script. I use it all the time, so I definitely recommend donating to them. So I'm going to go ahead and select this Layers to Grid script. I'm going to get this notification that I would like the layers to be arranged left to right. I'll go ahead and say yes. And I only want one row down, so I'm going to type in 1, whoops, 1, hit OK. And the spaces in between layers, each one of these text elements is 1920 by 1080, so there's a lot of empty space on the left and on the right side. So keeping that in mind, I actually want some negative pixels to squeeze in these layers closer to each other. Now that magic number I found was -650, so if I go ahead and type enter, you'll see that they should be spaced pretty evenly across. Now with all these selected, I'm going to go ahead and just pick whip to the first letter. That way I can select it, scale and position it, and the rest will follow. So I think right around there looks right here, a little higher up. That looks pretty good to me. Cool. So now one issue I noticed right off the bat is my text elements are only about 5 seconds long and my composition is about 10 seconds long. So I want these to loop indefinitely. Now I could just right click, go to Interpret Footage, Main, and over here at the bottom I can just type in the amount of times I want to loop, but I have to do that for each individual one. The way I found that's a lot faster, that I could just copy paste the looping effect. Right click your effect, go to time, go to enable time remapping, and that'll create a keyframe at the beginning and at the end of your layer. Now I'm going to go to the first frame and alt click my stopwatch, and I'm going to type lowercase loop, uppercase out, open bracket, quote, cycle, end quote, and end bracket. Now if I drag the end all the way out, I can go to the end of this layer and I'll just solo this C, and we should just see it continue to loop on indefinitely, which we do, so we know that works. Now I'm going back to the very first frame again. I will select this time remap effect. I'm just going to Control C, and let's select these other text elements, and I'll hit Control V, and I will drag their endpoint out as well. And now if I unsolo the C and play it out, just turn off the footage so it plays back a little bit faster, we'll see that all the text continues to loop on indefinitely, which is exactly what we want. Now I will go ahead and turn back on my footage so we can see what we're working with. Now the next thing I want to do is solo some of this light cast for each letter, so I'm just going to start with C. Before I do that, I'm going to select all my letters and let's just change the label so I know what I'm working with. And I'm also going to just go ahead and pre-compose them. And to stay organized, I'm going to name this Crate Text. Awesome. Now I want to solo this light cast. So the way I'm going to do that is a similar technique that I just used to make these loop actually. So I'm going to right click on my footage. I'm going up to time, enable time remapping, and again that'll create a keyframe at the beginning and end of my composition. I'll navigate forward, let's say maybe 5 frames, and I'll set another keyframe over here. And I only want this space in between these two keyframes to loop indefinitely. If there's another keyframe either here or somewhere over here, that's not going to work. So all I'm going to do is delete this third keyframe, so I only have these two. I'll go back to my first frame. I'm going to Alt click the stopwatch, and I'll type in that same expression, loop out, open bracket, quote, cycle, end quote, end bracket. And now if I hit play, you'll see that I'll just jump back and forth in between these 5 frames, and that looks pretty good. So I'm going to follow the same technique for one more letter and walk you guys through it. So I will drag in my flashlight footage, right click on it, enable time remapping, and I will just go forward until the light is where the R is. I'll set a keyframe right here, and I'll move forward the same amount of frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames. I'll set another keyframe, and I need to make sure and delete this very first keyframe and this very last keyframe. Now I'm just going to move this to the beginning of the timeline, and I'm going to make sure this keyframe is at the very first frame, and we can just stretch that out. And then I need to apply this expression again, so I'm just going to click it, hit Control C to copy it. I'll click this stopwatch now, hit Control V, and if I play it back, you'll see it starts to jump around. And I'm just going to draw a mask. I'm going to hit G to bring up this pen tool, and I'm just going to draw a mask around this light. And I will do the same for this light. And just so we can see everything that's going on, I will drag a fresh footage layer underneath everything. And I'll select both these, hit F for feather, let's feather them out a little bit. There's a little dark area there that's making it look a little too fake for me, so I'm just going to adjust the mask accordingly. Looks like I did not feather this one. There we go. So that's the process. I'm going to do this for each letter, but obviously I don't want to force you guys to sit around and watch me do it, so I'm just going to speed this process up. Great, so now I've gone through each letter and created its fake light cast. Let's go ahead and just play it back so you guys can see what it looks like. It looks like some of the masks I think I want a little too high with, so I'm just going to go through each one and drag the top of the mask down a little bit because I don't want to see any of my feet sneaking through or anything like that. That looks pretty good. I think I'm also going to make the feathering of each one around 40. Fantastic. And let's just play this back again really quickly. Looks like this E is a little funky. I don't really love that one. I think it's just a little too fast, so I'm just going to stretch this last keyframe out a little bit, and let's play it back from right here. And I do like that it is different and the rest look a little too similar, so what I'm going to do is select them all. I'm going to hit U to bring up the keyframe, and for some of these I'm just going to swap the keyframes around just so they're not all moving the same direction, because I was moving left to right, so the way all these lights are moving currently is left to right, but if I randomize some of them, that should help add some variation to it. So I'm going to go ahead and RAM preview this. So that's looking pretty good to me. I do think these kind of dark lines are ruining the effect a little bit. So I am going to go through and adjust each mask. And I think I want to feather it out just a little bit more, so I'm going to make the feathering 50 on all these. Let's see how that looks. Awesome, so that effect is looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to just select all my light cast effects now. This one looks a little funky, so I think I want to adjust it slightly. There we go. So I'm going to select all of these, and I'm just going to pre-compose and move them into a new composition, and I'm going to call these light cast. Fantastic. So now we have our crate text and our light cast all set up. So I'm just going to drag a clean piece of the flashlight footage underneath everything, just so we can watch it all together now. And that's looking pretty cool to me. I think for this crate text, I'm going to change the mode to add. And let's add a glow. I'm just going to add this glow effect directly to the crate text pre-comp. I'm going to increase the radius a little bit. And let's mess with the threshold. Maybe bring in the threshold up, kind of preserve some of that blue pretty nicely. And I'll play that out. Awesome, so that's starting to look pretty good to me. So the next thing I think I want to do is get that dancer that was in the preview in here. So here's my dance footage. Let's go ahead and just preview this so you can see what it looks like. So the thing I want to do now is solo out this blue light and this red light. So I'm just going to pre-compose this footage by right-clicking and going to pre-compose, and I'll just label this dancer. And let's go into this dancer pre-comp. And I'm going to duplicate this. And for my bottom footage, I'm going to hit T and let's drop the opacity. This is just so I can see the footage underneath as a reference as I go around and mask these lights. So there's several ways to do this, but the cleanest way I found is just to mask each light individually. I'm going to hit Q until I bring up my ellipse tool. I'm going to start with the blue light, so I'll just draw this ellipse around the blue light. I'm going to hit M, which brings up my mask path, and hit the stopwatch. And I'm just going to move every 2 or 3 frames and just move this ellipses around and make sure that the blue light is always contained within. So this is a little annoying of a process, so I'm just going to speed it up for you guys again. Great, so I've gone around and I've masked around the blue light pretty quickly. It doesn't need to be perfect, you just need to make sure that the blue light is contained within your mask. I'm going ahead and just turn off this bottom layer so you can see the blue. And it looks like it stays within my mask pretty well. So now what I need to do is isolate this blue as much as possible and try and get rid of this background. Now I could throw on the curves or levels and try and just up the contrast, but I like this other technique a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is create a new black solid. I'll just drag that beneath my blue light effect and select my blue light effect and my black solid. I'm going to right click and pre-compose. Move all attributes in the new composition and click OK. And the reason I'm using this black solid is so this background isn't an alpha. I actually need, for this effect to work, I actually need this to be filled in and actually black. So now with this pre-composition, I'm going to bring this shift channels effect. So just type in shift channels into your effects and presets panel, and I'm just going to drag this shift channels onto my pre-composition. Now you see where it says take alpha from and it says alpha. I'm actually going to change that to blue. So now all that is visible is this blue light. So if I just play through really quickly, you can kind of see what's going on. Now that worked pretty well. There's a couple areas where you see some of the background sneaking through. So the way I'm going to fix that, I'm going to go into my pre-composition. I'm going to select my light exposure blue light footage, and I'm just going to add a curves effect, and let's just throw on a pretty heavy S-curve and just adjust it until you see the background disappear. And I'll come back to my main comp. Let's just play that out now. So the next thing I want to do with my pre-comp selected, I'm going to drop an echo effect on it. And for my number of echoes, I'm just going to increase that to maybe 25. And now if we play it out, you see that a light trail is being created. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my dance footage again. And let's change the blending mode of my pre-comp to, let's say add. Where's add? Let's play this out and see how it looks. So that's pretty cool. I think it's looking a little too chunky, I would say. So I want to bring this decay from 1 down to 0.95, so the trails decay over time. Then I want to add a CC vector blur effect onto it. And let's just increase the amount. Doesn't have to be drastic, but it kind of pinches in the corners a little bit. Gives it this kind of weird, cool look. Maybe mess with some of these other settings. Great, and let's just play this out and see how it looks. Great, I'm liking this effect. I'm going to name this pre-comp. Blue light. And I'm going to do that exact same technique with the red light. So I'm just going to speed up through this process, so I'll have both the blue light and the red light done. Great, so I've gone around and I've drawn a rough mask around my red light. Let's go ahead and just solo that red light. So this is what it looks like. It's not quite as prominent as the blue light, but it should work fine. So I'm going to apply the same effects I applied to the blue light. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit Control-Y. Let's make a new black solid. And I'll drop that under my red light. Select both the black solid and my red light. Pre-compose this. Let's call this red light. Call this blue light. Great. And now I'm going to select my blue light effect. I'm going to copy the shift channels, the echo, the vector blur, all of it. Copy that and just paste it to my red light pre-comp. I have to go up to my shift channels and change the take alpha from blue to red. Now let's just solo that again and play it back. And it is working, but we are getting a lot of the background visible. So I'll just go into that red light pre-comp, select the footage, and let's go ahead and just throw in a curves. I'll make it darker and a bit of an S-curve until just that red light is visible. I'll come back to the main comp, and let's go ahead and change the blending mode to add. And I'll go ahead and make the opacity on the dancer footage full. And let's just play this out and see how it looks. Great, so I'm liking this effect. I think it works pretty well. The red light isn't as strong as the blue light, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and move forward. So all I want from this composition is the blue and the red light. So I'll just delete this reference footage of the dancer. So now these add modes aren't really going to apply anymore. I'll just leave them as is, it doesn't matter. And I'll come back to the main comp, which has my text elements, my light casting, and should now have this blue light and this red light here, which it does. We don't need this footage. So if I play this out, it's going to play very slow for me, so I'm just going to drop. Let's go all the way down to quarter resolution so we can get some kind of fast playback. So you can see what's going on here. Playback is super slow, so I'm just going to keep charging forward. I'm going to now bring in my dance footage one more time. Let's just drag it underneath everything. I'm going to select this crate. No, not the crate text. This dancer footage I'm going to rename as, let's call this dancer lights. And I think I want them on top of the text. I think that'd look cool. So I'll leave it up there, and I'll change the blending mode to add. So what I need to do is figure out a way to make her legs visible. Now there's a couple ways you could do this. You may have to do a little roto depending on your shot, or you may be able to pull a LUMA matte. There's a lot of dark in this shot, but I still think I can get away with at least an okay LUMA matte because she is somewhat darker than her background, especially around here. Not so much here, but let's go ahead and see what we can do. So I'm going to just duplicate my dance footage, bring it above all the pre-comps, and let's just duplicate it one more time. Now with this top footage, I'm going to go ahead and drop a curves effect on it. And I just want to see if I can make the background as bright as possible and her as dark as possible. That looks like it's working out all right. Not perfect. I'm going to go ahead and drop a tritone effect on this so I can make these midtones entirely black. And let's go with something. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to get it perfect, so I may end up having to do some roto, which is unfortunate, but let's just see what this looks like in the meantime. So I'll select the footage underneath the footage with curves, and I'll change this track matte to LUMA matte. And I'll just unsolo these so we can see the other pre-comps. Oh, my mistake. So not LUMA matte, change it to LUMA inverted matte. And now we can see that the leg footage is on top of the other effects. So with this leg footage selected, I actually want the text to be above her, not behind her. So I'll just draw a rough mask. Actually, I'll hit G, try and get some of the shadow and her legs. And I'll just draw a rough mask around her legs like that. So I'm just going to bring the crate text above at the very top, and I'll have these other pre-comps underneath. And let's just play this out and see if it looks all right. Cool, so this is working. The LUMA matte is clearly not clean enough. I think I might get away with adding a little bit of a blur to the LUMA matte. So the footage that I added the curves and the tritones to, I'm now going to just add a fast blur. I'll toggle the repeat edge pixels, so let's just increase this slightly. Maybe increase it all the way up to 25, looks good. I'll zoom out. And let's just do a RAM preview of all the effects together and see what we're working with. Great, so that LUMA matte actually worked out a bit better than I thought. If you want it to be super clean, you'll probably have to do a little roto work. But this is pretty much the effect that I want. Now, one thing I am noticing, her movement is way smoother than everything else because everything else is very kind of stop motion-y and jumpy. So the way I want to go about this is I want to change my composition frame rate. So I'm going to hit Control K. My frame rate is currently 30 frames, but let's drop that down to 10. I'm going to hit OK. Just drop my resolution to half so I can get faster playback. And let's just preview this. And I'll just stop the preview here for now. Let's just play this back and see what we got. Cool, so this is our final effect with our light casting, our typography kit, and our faked echo long exposure all together. To add just a little bit of extra craziness, I think I'm going to select everything, drop it into a pre-comp, and let's add the echo effect one more time. And I actually like these current settings, just the standard, a lot. Let's just play this back and see what it looks like. And that is the final effect. Alright guys, if you like this tutorial, please subscribe. It means a lot. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. That's where you're going to get your updates on when we add new content to the site. And check us out regularly. We upload new content almost every day. We got a great team here, and we have a lot of exciting things in the mix. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and until next time.